Okay, guys, so we're going to go through how to retime a video. The first thing you want to do is identify a chunk of the song you want to match up. Let's take a look at what I've got so far. Anytime you want to preview your video, you can, of course, hit full screen button underneath your preview window, and you can play it. So let's see how it looks. So that's what I have so far. It's always helpful to take a moment and just recheck your video and see what might bother you, whether things are lining up. I already noticed that I might want to change her around. She's not quite as much on the beat as I want. So I might go back later and fix that. Of note, when you're fixing a video, you always want to make sure before you move on to the next part that you've got this first part solid, because all the changes you do to this section will affect how the other timings in your video will go. So always make sure before you move on to do what Mr. Romano is currently not doing, which is make sure that you're super happy with how things work up until that point. So first things first, you need to identify a section of a song that you want to match up. So I'm going to play the song and try to identify a section. So a part where there's a nice break where I can stop or start a song. Istanbul was Constantinople, now it's Istanbul, not Constantinople, been a long time gone, Constantinople, now it's Turkish delight, on a moonlit night. So that sounds like a good section. Why? Because they're ending a line. Typically you want to start or stop when the lyrics or something in the music starts or stop. So for instance, he ends a line there on a so he ends a full line there and then moves to a next line. So I'm going to try and identify where exactly that is. Whoops, too late. So right about there. When I found a spot that I like, I'm going to make sure my playhead, which is this line, lines up with that spot. If you have trouble viewing that, you can zoom in, just like you did with your videos up here. And I'm going to right-click. Whoops. I'm going to right-click and do something called split clip. You'll notice when I make a split, I can see a clear line break here. So they're two separate parts. I do this so I can know where I need to stop and where I need to stop. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Ooh, I already know that I've got a little bit that needs to match up here. So the trick is making your sections and then making things line up perfectly. So for instance now, I would then try to do something similar in the dance videos that we find up above. So I'm going to start with the slow dance video because it's a little easier to spot these things in slow videos. So notice, things may be easier if I zoom in. So if I need to see things closer, I just zoom down to a more particular mark so I can see things much more closely. I can also make things bigger if I'm having trouble seeing. What I'm trying to look for is where a movement starts and a movement ends. So for instance, when she hits the floor is probably a good time, is probably a point when she's on beat. So let's see. Actually, I like it more when she flares her arm up. Try to look for points where there's really obvious big movements. Like for instance, I like when she whips her arm up. Why? Because it's really obviously that's beat. So look for spots where they're doing a really big obvious movement and starting or stopping it. So I found a part where she stopped a movement. I'm going to then try and find another section where she stops another movement. So again, I found the part where she just flings her hands up and legs in the air. Man, I wish I could do that. But that's still a little bit short. You'll notice as I drag along, it tells me how much I've got. So notice, how much time did I manage to grab this time? So only about 3.4. I want something near the amount of time that we've gotten. So I've got 8.3 seconds. Notice it says the second mark here, 8.3. I'm going to try and drag that out until it's around that time, within like a few seconds. 3 is definitely too short. You don't want to go perfect. You don't want to go 8.3 seconds because their movements aren't going to line up. But I'm going to try and get something within 2 or 3 seconds of it. But again, I have to find where she starts or stops a movement. Let's do it where she wraps her arms around her legs like that. There. That seems like the end of movement. And then I'll drag it down. I'll start checking and see how things look initially. So what's the first thing we notice with our ears when I play that? What's going on? There's 2 audios. So notice, because we're working with a live video that has its own audio, first thing we have to do is make sure that we can't hear the music in the other thing. So the easiest way to do that is the blue bar beneath the video is the audio for that particular piece of video. Notice on the other ones, I don't have any of those waves. If I take this line and shove it down, I mute that clip. So now notice, so now I don't have that double audio. Sorry, I'm looking it down. So here's where we are at part 7 now. At part 7 is speeding down or speeding up or slowing down the clip. At the top, above the preview window, there's a clock. Does everyone see this clock right here? Jeremiah, need eyes on the board. Clock. The clock is what speeds up or slows down. So notice when we click it, we get options at the top. We have normal, slow, fast, freeze frame, and custom. We could, of course, try doing slow, but that doesn't match things up. We really want custom for the most part so that we can actually fine-tune it. What we're trying to do is change the number here so that the clips perfectly line up. Notice on your paper, take a look underneath 7. Slowing down a clip makes the percentage, making this percentage smaller, makes the clip longer. Speeding up a clip, making the percentage higher, makes the clips shorter. So in this case, is my clip right now longer or shorter than the audio? So I've got my line right on the break. It's longer. So I'm going to have to change the speed to something higher. So right now it's at 50%. So let's try to see what happens at 75. Closer, but now it's short. So now that it's shorter, let me play around with the numbers. Shorter means I need a higher number. So let me try it at 80. Oops, I'm going the wrong direction. I should be making it slower. Let's try 70. I like to place my line at the end just to see if it's perfect. I notice right now that there's a little bit of overlap. If you're having trouble telling if it's going longer, just push the slider forward and you can take a close look at how much time is being used. So I can then put my line here. Notice there's a lot over. So I'm going to go again, select my clip. I'm going to speed it up just a little. Let's try 72. No, too short. 71. 71 might be as close as I can get. I can try, let's see if I can do 70.5. I don't know if it'll take, nope, won't take decimals. So at certain points you do have to accept it may not be absolutely perfect. If it's like this, at this point you can then, if it's as close as you can make it, for instance 71 is probably about as close as I can make it, I can extend it out just a little bit. That shouldn't affect my typing. There we go. Now it's perfectly lined up. So let me see how that actually looks now that I've slowed it down and see if the movements actually line up.
Istanbul was Constantinople, now it's Istanbul, now Constantinople, been a long time gone. Constantinople, now it's Turkish delight on a moonlit night.
So that looks pretty close. A little bit slow for my taste. I might actually try and find a faster piece, just because she looks super slow when she does this. Although it is nice and graceful and it does hit the beats correctly. Especially, I really like how she wraps her hands around her legs at the end. So that's the basic process. Questions, guys?